There was a cave. It was not supposed to be there, not in the way it was found, not with what it contained, not in the condition that preserved what it held for 2 millennia of deliberate silence. In 1947, a Bedouin shepherd, searching for a lost goat in the cliffs above the northwestern shore of the Dead Sea, threw a stone into a dark opening and heard something shatter. What shattered was not rock. What shattered was a clay jar, and inside that jar, wrapped in linen, sealed against time with a precision that suggests whoever hid them expected them to be found by someone who would understand what they meant, were scrolls, documents, ancient manuscripts, some of them predating the oldest known biblical texts by more than 1,000 years. The question that has never received a satisfying answer from mainstream scholarship is not why they were hidden. The question is why, after their discovery, the specific documents that rewrote the official understanding of Genesis 6 were withheld from public access for nearly 50 years. The official account of Genesis 6 is familiar to anyone who has spent time in a church or synagogue. The sons of God saw the daughters of men, found them beautiful, and took them as wives. Their offspring were the Nephilim, described as mighty men, men of renown. God observed that the wickedness of humanity had become total. He grieved that he had made man. He determined to send a flood. This is the version printed in every Bible in every language on the planet. It is presented as complete. Mainstream scholarship, when pressed on the sons of God, offers 2 primary interpretations: that they were fallen angels in some traditions, or that they were powerful human rulers, the lineage of Seth, who married into the lineage of Cain. Both interpretations are given in seminaries. Neither interpretation explains the Nephilim. But here is the detail that almost no one mentions. The Hebrew word translated as Nephilim appears exactly twice in the entire Torah. Once in Genesis 6:4 and once in Numbers 13:33, where the spies returning from Canaan describe men so large that they felt like grasshoppers standing beside them. The official account gives no origin story for these beings. It states they existed. It does not explain what they were, where they came from, or what happened to them. The Dead Sea Scrolls answer every one of those questions, and the people who first translated them in the 1950s knew it. The document is called 1Q Genesis Apocryphon. It was found in Cave 1 at Qumran, the same cave that yielded some of the most significant manuscript discoveries in modern history. It is an Aramaic expansion of the Genesis narrative, written in a scribal hand that dates it to somewhere between the 2nd century BCE and the 1st century CE. It does not paraphrase Genesis, it expands it. It fills the spaces that the Hebrew text compresses into single sentences with material that reads like the memory of a civilization that was present for what Genesis merely records. But 1Q Genesis Apocryphon was not the most significant document recovered from Qumran regarding Genesis 6. That distinction belongs to a text found in Cave 4, the Book of Giants. Fragments of at least 6 separate copies of the Book of Giants were recovered from Qumran, meaning it was not an obscure text kept by a single eccentric scribe. It was copied, preserved, and studied by the community that hid these scrolls. The Qumran community, the group now known to scholars as the Essenes, treated the Book of Giants with the same reverence they gave to Isaiah and Deuteronomy. And the Book of Giants names the Nephilim individually. It records their deeds. It records their communications with their imprisoned fathers. It records their dreams of coming judgment. The Aramaic word used throughout these fragments for the Nephilim is Nephilin, from the root nephol, meaning to fall, to cast down, to be brought low. The modern translation renders Nephilim as giants, a physical description. The original Aramaic is a verdict. The fallen ones, those who have been cast down. What is lost in translation is not merely a nuance. What is lost is the entire nature of these beings. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church has preserved the complete Book of Enoch for more than 2,000 years. The Ge'ez manuscript tradition, maintained without interruption inside the ancient monasteries of Lalibela and the highlands of Tigray, contains the full text in its original Ge'ez script, a language older than Amharic, a language that developed specifically for the preservation of religious texts in the Horn of Africa. The Ethiopian Church did not acquire the Book of Enoch through contact with the Qumran community. The Ethiopian Church acquired it through the pre-exilic Jewish diaspora, through the community of Beta Israel, through a transmission route entirely independent of the Dead Sea. When the Qumran fragments of the Book of Enoch were analyzed against the Ethiopic text, scholars found that the two versions, preserved by two independent communities with no documented contact during their foundational periods, matched at the level of specific narrative detail, specific names, and specific numerical sequences. The probability of this correspondence emerging by coincidence across two independent transmission chains separated by thousands of miles and maintained in completely different languages is a statistical impossibility. What this means is that both communities were copying from a common original that predates both of them. And what that original says about Genesis 6 is not what the official Bible teaches. The Book of Enoch, chapters 6 through 11, presents the full account. 200 watchers, the Hebrew word being Irim, a word meaning those who are awake, those who watch, descended on Mount Hermon. The name Hermon in Hebrew, Charam, carries a root meaning devoted to destruction, set apart under a ban. The mountain itself, in the Hebrew naming tradition, was identified as the site of an irrevocable oath. The watchers swore an oath together on that mountain because they understood that what they were about to do could not be undone individually. They needed to bind each other to the descent. Their leader was named Semiaza. His lieutenants included Azazel, Amaros, Barakijal, Kokabel, Ezekiel, and Sarakjal. 20 names are recorded in chapter 6. These were not anonymous entities. They were named. Their individual domains of forbidden knowledge are recorded. Metalworking and weaponry from Azazel, enchantments and root cuttings from Amaros, the signs of lightning from Barakijal, the knowledge of the clouds from Kokabel. They did not simply father children. They transferred specific knowledge systems to human civilization. And the result, according to Enoch, was that the earth filled with violence, and the corruption described in Genesis 6:12 spread through Kol Basar, all flesh, not all people, all biological matter. The corruption was not moral in origin, it was genetic. The Sumerian civilization maintained a parallel record with striking specificity. The Anunnaki, those who came down from heaven to earth in the Sumerian tradition, descended to a civilization that had no metalworking, no advanced agriculture, and no astronomical knowledge. After their arrival, Sumerian civilization demonstrates a discontinuous leap in all three areas within a period that archaeologists struggle to explain through gradual development. The Sumerian King List, one of the oldest administrative documents in human history, records 8 kings who reigned before the flood, with lifespans ranging from 18,600 to 43,200 years per reign. The document does not present these as mythological figures. It presents them in the same format and tone as the post-flood kings who can be archaeologically confirmed. The Hindu Puranas record the descent of the Devas and Asuras into human affairs during the Satya Yuga, the Age of Truth, a period before a catastrophic global flood described in the Shatapatha Brahmana, where the Rishi Manu is warned in advance and instructed to build a vessel. The Greek tradition records the descent of the Titans and their union with human women, producing a race of heroes and giants described as monstrous in scale, before Zeus determines to cleanse the earth through a flood and preserves Deucalion and Pyrrha. 3 traditions. No documented contact routes during the periods when these foundational narratives were first encoded. All 3 describe the same sequence. Supernatural beings descend. Union with humans occurs. Giant offspring result. Global catastrophe follows. Single righteous man preserved. The statistical probability that this is coincidence is effectively 0. The Council of Laodicea met in 363 CE. Among its 60 canons, Canon 60 establishes the list of books to be read in churches. The Book of Enoch does not appear on that list. It had appeared on earlier lists. It had been cited directly by Jude in the canonical New Testament in verses 14 and 15, where the prophecy of Enoch, the 7th from Adam, is quoted directly. It had been treated as authoritative scripture by Tertullian, one of the earliest and most influential Christian theologians, who wrote in the 2nd century CE that the Book of Enoch was rejected by Jews because it prophesied too precisely about Christ. By the 4th century CE, the institutional calculus had shifted, not because the Book of Enoch was considered inauthentic, not because scholars doubted its age. The Qumran fragments would later confirm it was in circulation at least 2 centuries before Christ, but because what it described was too dangerous to circulate freely in a church that had just aligned itself with the Roman imperial authority under Constantine. An account of powerful angelic beings who defied divine order, corrupted the human bloodline, and transferred forbidden knowledge that overturned established hierarchies, was not useful theology for an institution that required its followers to submit to hierarchical authority. The suppression was not theological, it was political. The Council of Laodicea did not debate the authenticity of Enoch. It simply excluded it, and the exclusion held for 1600 years. Now read Genesis 6 again with all of this in place. The sons of God are identified by name in the Book of Enoch: Semiramis, Azazel, and their 200. Their descent is geographically located on Mount Hermon, a specific site that can be mapped. Their oath is recorded in specific language. The Nephilim are their offspring, described in the Book of Giants as beings who dreamed of judgment before it came, who sent messages through their human scribes to their imprisoned fathers in the valleys of the earth, who knew what was coming and could not stop it. The forbidden knowledge they transferred to human civilization is itemized. Weaponry, enchantments, astronomical knowledge, the cutting of roots for pharmaceutical and magical purposes. The corruption described in Genesis 6:12 as kal basar, all flesh, is not poetic language. The Hebrew basar refers specifically to physical, embodied existence. The Aramaic equivalent in the Qumran texts specifies the corruption of zera, seed, the biological inheritance line. The Book of Jasher, another text excluded from the official canon, specifies in chapter 4 that the mixing described in Genesis 6 extended beyond the human species to the animal kingdom, which corresponds directly to the mention in Genesis 6:12 that all flesh had corrupted its way. The Qumran community, the Ethiopian church, the Sumerian records, the Dead Sea Scroll fragments of the Book of Giants, the 1Q Genesis Apocryphon, they all describe the same event with the same specific details. And the specific word analysis reveals what the English translation cannot carry. The Hebrew word for the watchers, Irim, contains within it the concept of perpetual wakefulness, beings who do not sleep, beings whose attention is total and unrelenting. When they turn that attention toward the daughters of men, the consequences were not accidental. The descent of the Irim was covenanted and irreversible by design. The name of the mountain confirms it, Qumran, devoted to destruction from the beginning. Jesus of Nazareth, speaking in Matthew 24:37, uses a specific phrase, "As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man." He does not say as it was in the days of general wickedness. He does not say as it was in the days of moral failure. He says, the days of Noah. The days of Noah are, according to the Book of Enoch, the Book of Giants, the 1Q Genesis Apocryphon, and the Dead Sea Scroll fragments that were withheld from public access for half a century. The specific period of the Watcher descent, the Nephilim corruption, the transfer of forbidden knowledge, and the catastrophic contamination of biological inheritance. A shepherd's stone thrown into a cave above the Dead Sea shattered a clay jar and opened a 2,000-year silence. What the documents inside that cave reveal about Genesis 6 was not hidden because it was false. The two independent preservation chains in Ethiopia and Qumran confirm the opposite. It was hidden because it described a pattern that operates beneath the surface of apparent normality. A pattern that, according to the one who cited Enoch's prophecy directly in the canonical New Testament, will operate again.